The moon was silent, dead and dry, its cracked surface stretched for miles, full of broken metal and the skeletons of forgotten machines. No birds, no wind, no voices, only dust and the faint echo of what used to be. But deep inside a buried alien facility, a single voice kept repeating one message again and again. Please, someone, help me. It was weak, tired, almost broken, but still trying. She had been calling out for 13 days straight. Eli Travers didn't plan to come here. He was just a scavenger, looking for old tech to sell. He had heard rumors about this place, how it used to be a lab, how it shut down after a failed experiment. Everyone said it was haunted or cursed. But Eli didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in parts, wires, circuits, and credits. So when his ship touched down on the silent ground, he only wanted to fill his bag and leave, but the signal caught him. At first, he thought it was static, just some broken broadcast stuck on loop. But when he listened closer, he felt a chill. Please, someone, help me. The voice wasn't robotic. It wasn't fake. There was pain in it, real pain. And it was definitely female. He tapped his scanner and adjusted the frequency. Is anyone alive down there? He asked, voice steady. For a moment, there was no reply. Just the same loop, then something changed. ... You heard me. The voice whispered, softer now, like it didn't believe it could be true. You heard me. Please don't go. That was all Eli needed. He tightened his gloves, pulled his rifle onto his back, and stepped into the ruins. The old metal doors were half melted, twisted like they had been in a fire. He squeezed through, his boots echoing. In the dark corridor, dust floated in the air, thick and choking. The emergency lights were still blinking red, low power and dying, somewhere deeper inside. The voice called again. I'm here, please. Eli moved fast, but careful. The building creaked like it could collapse at any second. He passed control rooms with shattered glass, labs with dried alien blood on the walls. He saw bullet holes, signs of a fight. Something bad had happened. Here, something hidden. The further he went, the stronger the signal became. Then he found the room. It looked like a security station. Broken monitors lined the wall, but one still worked, flickering with static. On the screen, a camera showed a small chamber deep underground. Inside it, curled up and barely moving, was an alien woman with blue skin, tangled silver hair, and glowing marks on her arms. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her lips cracked, her body shaking. Eli leaned in closer, and she looked upright into the camera. You're real, she whispered. You're not a dream. He swallowed hard, heart pounding. I'm coming, he said, even though she couldn't hear him. He followed the map from the console, moving down a staircase into the lower levels. Here, the air was colder, the lights even dimmer. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the walls buzzed with broken wires. Then he reached the locked door. Behind it was the chamber. And behind that her, he pressed the panel, but it blinked red. Access denied. He cursed under his breath, pulling out his tools. No time to be gentle, he muttered. Cutting into the side of the control box, sparks flew. Metal hissed, but he didn't stop. Then clicked. The door opened with a hiss. She was lying in the center of the chamber, too weak to move. Her eyes fluttered open when she saw him. A human, real, solid, breathing. You came, she said, tears rolling down her cheeks again. Eli walked forward slowly, kneeling beside her. Yeah, I did, he said quietly. What's your name? Celery, she whispered. They left me here. 13 days. I thought I was going to die alone. He nodded, gently lifting her up in his arms. You're not alone now, he said. But just as he turned to leave, the room shook. A deep, mechanical sound echoed through the walls. Something had detected the chamber was breached. Eli looked up. As red lights flashed all around him, "Great," he muttered, holding her tighter. "Guess we've got company." Behind him, steel doors slammed shut. The facility was waking up. And it didn't like that someone broke the silence, but Eli didn't care. He had found her, and no force in the galaxy was going to stop him now. The alarms were not loud, but they're deep. Steady rhythm echoed through the walls like a countdown, low and threatening. Eli tightened his grip on Sailari and stepped back into the hallway. Red emergency lights flashing dimly above. He looked. Both ways left was blocked by a collapsed ceiling. Right led into darkness. But his scanner still blinked with a path. She was cold in his arms, so light it scared him. Her silver hair was damp with sweat, skin dull and bruised. She kept whispering, something he couldn't understand. Her voice soft, repeating the same word again and again. Kethra. Like a prayer or a warning, he didn't know what it meant. And there was no time to ask. Eli moved fast, dodging sparks and broken tiles. The hallway narrowed as he entered the lower tunnels. The air smelled like burnt oil and rust. Every step made the floor groan. Every noise felt like it would wake something worse. A cracked speaker above buzzed to life, and a voice, robotic and calm, spoke a message: unauthorized biological breach detected. Lockdown in progress. They weren't just trying to stop him, they were sealing the place again. As if Sailari wasn't supposed to leave. As if she was still a prisoner, or worse, a weapon. He felt her twitch in his arms as the hallway opened into a control room. Half filled with smoke, monitors flickered on their own, showing broken camera feeds in one of them. Eli saw a group of security drones powering up in the armory 2 floors above. They were coming. And they weren't coming to ask questions. He looked at Sailari again, her eyes barely open, lips trembling. "Stay with me," he said, voice firm but calm. "I'm not leaving you here," she tried to respond, but her body shook violently for a moment and then went still. Eli panicked, pulled out his portable scanner and checked her vitals' weak pulse. Dropping fast, her body was in shutdown. He didn't have much time. He searched the room and found a backup medstim, old but intact. He didn't know if it would work on alien biology. But it was his only chance. He stabbed it gently into her side and waited for a few seconds. Nothing happened. Then, slowly, her breathing deepened and her fingers twitched again. Her eyes opened halfway and locked on his. "You are real?" she whispered. "I thought I was dreaming again." Before he could answer, the door behind him exploded inward with a flash of light. Metal fragments flew, and he threw himself over her, shielding her with his body. A security drone hovered in the doorway, weapons online, scanning him with cold blue light. "Surrender the subject," it said. "You are not authorized to remove asset K0 to 13. Eli's eyes narrowed. "She's not an asset." He growled. "She's a person." The drone's weapons charged. But he was faster, in one quick motion. He rolled behind the console and pulled his rifle from his back. One shot clean, direct hit the drone's central core and sent it crashing to the floor in sparks. More would come, but he had bought a few minutes. He didn't wait. He lifted her again and ran toward the maintenance shaft shown on the old map. The only known path to the upper levels still open. The tunnel was cramped and full of broken piping. Steam hissed around them as he climbed with her on his back. Every muscle burned. Every step felt slower than the last. But he didn't stop. Not even when he heard more drones echoing behind him. Not even when Sailari whispered weakly, "They will kill you too, just like they killed the others." Eli kept climbing, kept moving. "Let them try," he muttered. "I didn't come all this way to lose you now." At the top of the shaft, he kicked open a rusted grate and dragged them both out onto a balcony over a massive reactor room. The hum of old power cells buzzed beneath them. Below, dozens of inactive pods lined the floor like silent graves. Salari weakly turned her head and looked down. Her eyes widened with horror. They were like me, she whispered, all left to die. Eli paused, understanding slowly setting in. This wasn't just about her. This was a place where experiments had been buried, forgotten lives, all silenced, and somehow she had survived 13 days. Alone in the dark, the only one left, he turned to the far wall, where an emergency lift blinked green, still working. Maybe luck was finally on their side, but behind him, a low growl echoed through the shadows. Not machine, not metal, something else was waking up, something alive and angry. Something that didn't want them to leave. Eli held Salari tighter, jaw clenched, heart racing. Almost there, he whispered. Just hold on. Then he ran, and the shadows followed. The emergency lift shook as it rose, grinding and creaking like it hadn't moved in years. Eli stood in the center, holding Salari close to his chest. Her breathing was uneven, and her skin had gone pale. Her arms were too weak to grip him, but her head rested against his shoulder. He could feel the heat rising from below, the reactor core pulsing louder with each second, and the sound of something crawling across metal still following. Come on, he whispered to the lift, staring up at the blinking red light that showed their progress. They were almost at the surface level, only 2 more floors. But then the lift suddenly stopped. A sharp jolt throwing him off balance, the lights flickered, then died. All that remained was a faint red glow from his visor and the cold darkness around them. Not now, Eli muttered. He set Salari gently against the wall and opened the control panel. Wires sparked inside, half-burnt and fused together. He tried to reroute the power using his portable core, his fingers shaking from urgency. Below them, metal creaked. And something heavy climbed the shaft, 1 level down. Then, another, getting closer, faster. Salari stirred and whispered something he couldn't hear. He looked down at her, scanning her body again, Vital's unstable heartbeat slowing. She needed warmth, water, and medicine, not fear, not darkness, not more running. The lift groaned, and the platform started to drop slightly, just a few inches. But enough to tell him the thing climbing below was heavy and close. Eli pulled his rifle from his back and aimed it down the shaft. His flashlight caught a glimpse of something. Just for a second, a long clawed hand, black and oily, reached up the edge, followed by glowing red eyes that locked onto him instantly. He fired without hesitation, bullets sparking against the creature's body. It screamed high and metallic, like a broken siren, and fell back into the shadows. But it didn't stop. It started climbing faster now, as if the pain only made it angrier. Eli yanked the power core loose and slammed it into the panel one more time. Sparks flew, and the lift jolted again, this time upward. Slowly, painfully. It crawled toward the surface behind him. The creature roared and leaped onto the side of the shaft, its claws digging into the wall. Its long, armored tail swung wildly, smashing into the metal, bending support beams, and making the entire lift. Sheikh Salari opened her eyes briefly, whispering, "It was made here. It was meant to guard us." But it lost control. Eli didn't need more details. He could see that whatever this thing wasn't going to stop. Not unless it was destroyed. The lift passed the final level, and the surface door appeared above them, sealed tight, just a few feet away. Now, he lifted his rifle again and aimed for the emergency hatch. The lock burst open in one shot, and sunlight spilled in, pale and weak, but real. Eli grabbed Salari with one arm and climbed through the hatch just as the creature roared behind him. Claws scraping the lift floor, reaching for his feet. He rolled out onto the rocky ground, dust flying around him, and slammed the panel to. Close the hatch, The lift dropped instantly, and a loud, distant crash echoed from below. Then silence. For the first time in hours, everything was still. No alarms, no machines. No chasing shadows. Just the cold wind of the dead moon and the hum of Eli's heartbeat in his ears. He looked down at Silari, who was barely awake. "We made it," he whispered, brushing hair from her face. "You're out now?" She looked at the sky, confused by the light, then slowly smiled. The sun. "I thought I'd never see it again." Eli nodded, turning to the small hill where his ship was parked. Still half covered in sand. It wasn't far, just a short walk. But every step felt heavier than the last. The weight of what happened below, the things he saw, the truth about. The facility had all settled in his chest like a stone. He finally reached the ship and placed her on a padded seat, activating the med bay. Machines began scanning her, beeping softly. Trying to stabilize her condition, she winced as tubes were attached, but didn't pull away. She was too tired to fight, too broken to fear him now, as Eli sat beside her. His hands trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion, she whispered one final thing before her eyes closed. "You heard me," when no one else did. He stared at her in silence, unsure what to feel on Gale, guilt, sorrow, or something more. All he knew was that she was alive. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The ship's engines powered up, dust rising. As the thrusters hummed, Eli didn't know where he'd go next. But wherever it was, he wouldn't be going alone anymore. Eli sat in the pilot seat, staring through the windshield as the engines warmed up. The desert moon stretched far behind them, silent, broken, and full of secrets no one wanted to uncover. He looked over his shoulder at the med bay, where Sil lay wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her body was still recovering. But her breathing was steadier now. Her face looked peaceful. Almost like she was asleep after a long nightmare. As the ship slowly lifted off the surface, Eli felt his nerves finally calm. For the first time in hours, he wasn't fighting something, running or watching someone die. But that peace didn't last long. A warning light blinked red on the console. Eli tapped it and frowned. Something was tracking the man. Unknown signal had locked onto the ship. He opened the scanner and saw a ship rising from the far side of the moon. Small but fast. No broadcast code, no ID. Just dark metal and sharp design. Eli muttered under his breath. Not good. He boosted speed, punching through the upper atmosphere. But the unknown ship followed, matching his moves. The chase had begun, and he was flying blind. He looked back at Silari again, then gritted his teeth and focused. "Don't worry," he said aloud, mostly to himself. "I'm getting us out of here." He dove the ship between drifting rock fields and old satellite debris, pushing the engines harder than he wanted. His little freighter wasn't built for combat, but he knew how to fly dirty, twist through wreckage, and disappear into dead zones. The enemy ship fired a pulse shot, just missing the wing. The blast rocked the cabin, and alarms blared again. Eli cursed and turned sharply, hoping to lose them in the dark. Suddenly, a new voice came from the speakers. Smooth, calm, female but cold. "Return the subject, human," it said. "She is property of the syndicate." "You have made a mistake." Eli leaned forward and answered back. "No mistake. She's a living person, not property. She is classified as K0213. The voice replied, "Return her, or be destroyed." The connection cut out, and two more pulse shots fired, one grazing the hull. The ship shook, and a few sparks dropped from the ceiling. Silari groaned in the back, waking slightly. Her eyes opened just a little, enough to see the chaos. "They found us," she whispered, voice hoarse. "They always do." Eli didn't reply. He pushed the ship through a sharp asteroid belt, hoping it would confuse the tracker. He could hear the metal groaning from the pressure. warning lights blinking across the dash. He needed to think fast. He had only one trick. Left, below them, a drifting cargo hauler floated dead in space, an old ship. Maybe decades abandoned, its engines were dead, but its docking bay was still open. Eli narrowed his eyes and made a decision. He dropped power, killed the lights, and drifted toward the hauler. The enemy ship flew past, unable to detect his ship. Without active energy signatures, for a few seconds, they were invisible, hidden in the graveyard of metal. Inside the dark cargo bay, the ship gently touched down, metal scraping softly beneath. Eli took a deep breath, then turned in his seat. He walked back to Sailari, kneeling beside her. She looked up at him, confused. "Why did you come for me?" she asked, her voice barely more than a breath. "I was forgotten. Everyone gave up." Eli sat beside her, resting his hand gently over hers. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I just couldn't ignore that voice. Something in it felt wrong. Like you shouldn't be left behind." Tears filled her eyes. But she didn't cry. Not this time. Her hand weakly gripped his fingers. "I didn't want to die in silence," she whispered. "But I was ready to." He shook his head. "You don't have to be ready anymore." They stayed there in silence, the dark ship floating inside a giant metal corpse. Safe for now, but far from free. Outside, the syndicate ship continued its sweep, scanning space, waiting. For them to move again, Eli knew they couldn't hide here forever. But for a few hours, they had peace. He opened a ration pack and helped her drink small sips of water. Bit by bit, she looked stronger already, color slowly returning to her face. She spoke again after a while. "You don't even know what I am, what I carry inside." Eli gave a small smile. "Maybe, but I know enough." Sailari looked into his eyes. And something inside her finally relaxed. Not safety, not trust, not yet, but something close. Like the beginning of hope, they were fugitives now, hunted by a syndicate that called her a number and him a mistake. But in this moment, inside a silent, broken ship, they weren't just survivors. They were something more to lives who had no reason to meet, yet did, and who refused to give up on each other. The hours passed slowly inside the dead cargo hauler. The only sound was the quiet hum of Eli's backup battery, keeping minimal systems running. He had sealed the ship's hatch tight, jammed the signal beacon, placed heat dampeners on the hull to stay hidden from the syndicate scanners. Outside, the enemy ship floated silently like a predator waiting for its prey to move. Inside, Eli sat near the medbed, watching Sailari sleep. Her breathing was stronger now, her skin no longer pale. And her fingers sometimes twitched as if her body was fighting its way back to life, but her mind was somewhere else. She mumbled words in her sleep, broken pieces of a past he didn't understand. Sometimes she whispered names. Other times she cried softly without tears. He gently placed a wet cloth on her forehead. She opened her eyes slowly, blinked, and looked at him with confusion. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice still raspy. "Hiding," Eli replied in an old cargo hauler. "The syndicate's still searching outside, but they haven't found us yet." She turned her head and looked at the dark ceiling. "I never thought I'd be this far from that chamber," she whispered, "or that someone would actually risk their life for me." Eli leaned back, resting his head against the wall. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly. "But I do want to understand. Why were you there? Why did they leave you like that?" Sailari was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. Slowly, like it hurt to remember. "I was part of a science unit working on genetic upgrades, experiments to make soldiers stronger, faster, unbreakable. But they needed test subjects, and I was chosen without consent. They said it was an honor, that I would help shape the future of our kind." Eli clenched his jaw. "They lied," she nodded. "They put something inside me. Something living. It merged with my blood. They called it a prototype. They didn't understand it fully, and when it reacted violently, they locked me away and labeled me as unstable. Her eyes met his, scared but honest. I'm not just running from them, Eli. I'm carrying something they still want. It's not just knowledge's living code, a weapon they can't control. Eli sat quietly for a moment, then asked, "Can it hurt you?" She shook her head slowly. "Not anymore. It changed me. Yes, but it's quiet now, like it bonded to my fear. And after 13 days of silence, it stopped fighting too." Eli stood and walked to the supply case, pulling out a nutrient patch and a warm pack. He returned and gently helped her sit up, placing the patch on her arm and the warm pack over her chest. "Then we keep you safe," he said simply. "That's all that matters." Solari gave him a weak smile, one that didn't belong to a weapon or a subject or a mistake. It belonged to someone finally being seen as a person. "Thank you," she whispered. Just then, a soft beep echoed. Through the ship, Eli stood and rushed to the console. His scanner was detecting movement near the hauler's docking bridge. A small drone too small for heavy attack was creeping along the outer hull. "Scanning for life signs. They're sweeping the wreck," Eli said quickly. "They're close." He dimmed all systems again and powered down the lights. The two of them sat in silence as the faint sound of the drone moved overhead. Slow and steady, searching every crack, Solari grabbed his wrist suddenly. Her touch cold but strong. "You need to leave me behind," she said, voice low but urgent. "They'll stop chasing if you give me up. You don't understand what the Syndicate does to people who interfere." Eli stared at her, not moving, not blinking. Then he said, "I don't care." She looked stunned. "Why? Why risk everything for me?" He didn't answer right away. Then, with a tired smile, he said, "Because you're not a mistake. You're not a number. You cried out for help. And I was the only one who heard. That means it's my job to see it through." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. She just stared at him as if trying to remember what hope felt like. The drone passed over them and then drifted away. Slowly turning back toward the main ship, Eli watched the screen until the signal vanished. They were safe for now. Eli stood and looked around the old hauler's remains. "We can't stay here much longer," he said, "but I think I know a place we can go, somewhere they won't look." "At least not right away." Solari nodded, her voice soft. "Wherever we go, I'll follow." He smiled, walked back to the pilot seat, and powered up the ship again. The engines hummed low, and the metal beneath them shook slightly. Outside, stars blinked through the cargo bay opening, and the galaxy waited. They were still hunted, still fragile, still uncertain, but they were no longer alone. The ship broke free from the cargo hauler in silence, drifting slowly through the asteroid field like a shadow. Eli kept the engines low and shields cold, trying to stay invisible. Solari sat beside him now, weak but awake. Her eyes scanned the stars ahead, her expression a mix of fear and wonder. It had been so long since she'd seen space not through a camera, not through glass, but with her own eyes. Free, Eli didn't speak much. His focus stayed on flying, on survival, but Solari watched him from the corner of her eye. He looked tired, older than before, like the weight of the last few days had changed something in him. After an hour, he finally broke the silence. "We're heading for the drifting zone beyond Station Bexus. It's where old ships go to die. Pirates hide, and nobody asks questions." Solari leaned her head back. "That sounds peaceful," she said with a tired smile. "It's not," he replied. "But it's where we might find someone who can help us." She looked down at her hands, the faint glow of her skin returning. "You really think someone will help someone like me?" Eli glanced at her. "Not for free, but we've got something better than credits proof. Memories, tech, they tried to erase. And maybe someone out there still has a heart." Hours passed, and stars blurred into trails. Finally, the wreck zone came into view, hundreds of dead ships floating in space like ghosts. Some were half destroyed, some just abandoned. A few still showed blinking lights, signs of hidden life inside. Eli picked one, a cargo barge, long forgotten. Its nameplate, burned away on, guided the ship toward its side port. If there's anyone on board, we'll ask for fuel. Maybe medical supplies, he said. If not, we search the ship and move on. He landed gently, attached the docking clamps, and checked his scanner. No immediate life signs, nothing moving inside. Still, he kept his rifle close as he opened the hatch and stepped onto the dark corridor. Of the dead barge, Solari followed slowly, her balance still weak, but her eyes alert inside. The ship was silent and cold. Lights flickered, wires hung from the ceiling, and old crates were scattered everywhere. Eli checked each room carefully. Until they reached the bridge, that's when they heard it movement, soft footsteps, and the sound of something dragging. Eli raised his rifle and aimed toward the shadows. "Show yourself," he said firmly. A voice answered, rough but calm. "Easy. Stranger, I don't want trouble." An older man stepped out from behind the console, wearing a patched-up coat and a wide grin. He had one cybernetic eye and a limp in his walk. "Name's Torvin," he said. "I live here." Eli lowered his weapon slightly. "Didn't mean to scare you, just needed a place to rest. We're not here to steal." Torvin looked at Solari, his expression changing. "You brought one of them. That's dangerous, friend." "She's not dangerous," Eli said firmly. "She's the one they tried to bury, and I pulled her out." Torvin studied her closely, then nodded slowly. So the stories were true. The Syndicate really did lock people up and call them failed projects. "They're still hunting her," Eli said. "We need help, fuel supplies. Maybe a map through the quiet zones." Torvin hesitated, then waved them forward. "Follow me. Let's talk in my quarters. I've got heat, food, and a working med scanner inside the small living space." Solari lay down on a padded bench while Torvin ran a scan over her. His brow furrowed as he read the results. "She's not dying," he said. "But whatever's in her blood, it's old tech, deep tech, pre-collapse level. No wonder they wanted to hide her." Solari looked away, her voice soft. "I didn't ask for this." Torvin sat beside her. "I believe you." Eli stood near the door, watching every corner of the room. "How long before they track us again?" Torvin shrugged. "Depends. Syndicate's slow in this sector, but if they ping the barge, you've got maybe an hour. Then help us," Eli said. "Help us disappear." Torvin looked between the two of them, then leaned back with a sigh. "I have a stealth pod, old smuggler model, small but invisible 2D scan. I'll transfer you there. Reroute the signal. They'll follow this barge instead, and you'll drift away clean." Eli nodded. "Why would you help us?" Torvin smiled sadly. "Because once, long ago, someone helped me when I was marked for death. I've been waiting a long time to return that favor." As the minutes passed, Torvin set the plan in motion. The stealth pod powered up, hidden under the main deck. Solari stepped inside slowly, leaning on Eli for support. She turned to Torvin and said, "Thank you. You didn't have to do this." "I did," he replied, "because you're still alive, and that means you still have a chance." The hatch closed, and the pod detached silently. Drifting into the void behind them, Torvin activated a false signal on the barge, drawing Syndicate attention like a flame in the dark inside the pod. Eli and Solari sat quietly as the stars passed them by. She reached out and took his hand. "We're still running," she said. "Yes," Eli replied, squeezing her hand gently. "But now we're running together." The stealth pod floated through deep space like a whisper. No lights, no sound, no signal, just a tiny shape drifting between stars. Eli sat in silence beside Silari, his hand still holding hers. Time didn't move the same out here. Every second stretched longer. Every breath felt heavier. Silari rested with her eyes half closed, her head on his shoulder. She was stable now, but far from healed. Her body had survived, but the pain, the memories still lived in her voice. Eli knew the syndicate wouldn't stop. They didn't. Lose things, especially not secrets, especially not ones with living proof. But for now, in the quiet hum of the pod, they were safe, and that was enough. Hours later, the pod beeped gently. It had reached a signal zone, a place far from syndicate patrols, but close enough for a secure message to be sent. Eli stood and activated the small console. Silari watched him as he opened a connection and recorded a message. "This is Eli Travers," he began. "I'm with someone the syndicate tried to erase. Her name is Silari, and she's not a threat. She's a survivor. A victim of what they did behind closed doors. We're alive, and we're not going back into the dark." He paused, then continued. "If anyone out there still cares about truth, find us, help us." He sent the message out, encoded and broken into fragments that would travel across the stars. It might take days, weeks, or never reach anyone. But he had to try. When he turned around, Silari was watching him with tears. In her eyes, "You're not giving up on me," she said softly. "Never," he replied without hesitation. "You cried for help, and I heard you, and I'll keep hearing you, no matter where we go." She reached out and placed her hand over his heart, her fingers shaking slightly. "They called me a failed subject. They gave me a number, locked me in a cage, waited for me to die quietly. But I didn't. I lived because of you." Eli looked at her, really looked beyond the bruises, beyond the fear. He saw someone who had suffered, but refused to break. Someone who still had fire left. Even in her weakest moment, "You saved yourself," he said gently. "I just helped open the door." The pod's navigation pinged again. It had found a small moon with breathable air and underground tunnels. An old rebel hideout, abandoned long ago. No syndicate presence, no traffic. Just silence. Eli smiled. "We've got a place to land." The pod entered the moon's thin atmosphere. Clouds of dust trailing behind it as it touched down near a rocky cliff. The door opened with a soft hiss, and the smell of real air, cold, dry, clean, rushed in. Eli stepped out first, rifle ready, scanning the quiet surroundings. Then he turned and helped Silari down. Her legs were weak, but she stood on her own, breathing in deeply. "It feels strange," she said, "to stand without chains, to breathe without fear." They entered the nearby tunnels, slowly exploring the dark halls. Some power remained, enough to light a few rooms and open locked doors. One chamber had beds, a water recycler, even a working food unit. Eli smiled. "Looks like home for the first time." Silari laughed, a soft, tired sound, but real. "Home," she repeated. "That word used to mean nothing to me." As they settled in, Eli lit a small heater and handed her a warm drink. They sat together on a low bench, the tunnel walls glowing faintly around them. Silari leaned her head on his shoulder again and whispered, "What if they find us again?" "They will," he said. "Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they'll come. They always do." "Then what?" she asked. Eli didn't look away from the stars visible through the cracks in the ceiling. "Then we fight, or we run again, or we find others who believe in something better." She nodded slowly. "I want to believe in that. I want to live. Like I matter." "You do," he said simply. "To me, you do." They sat in silence as the stars shifted above. Somewhere out there, the syndicate was still searching, still hunting, but here, in this moment, an abandoned alien woman and a lone human had found something stronger than fear, hope, connection, and the courage to go on. 13 days of silence had ended. Her voice had been heard, and someone had answered. Now, whatever came next, they would face it together.